Imagine a single bullet fired in the dark, a phantom shot that no one can prove was real, yet it becomes the sole justification to ignite a war that will consume millions of lives. On August 7, 1964, the United States Congress passed a resolution granting the president sweeping authority to wage war in Southeast Asia. The vote was nearly unanimous. Why? Because the president claimed American ships had been ruthlessly attacked without provocation in international waters. But what if that justification was a lie? A deliberate fabrication, an elaborate misunderstanding, or perhaps a chilling eagerness for conflict woven into the fabric of American foreign policy? This is the story of the Gulf of Tonkin Incident, not just a moment in history, but the pivotal deception that escalated a simmering conflict into the catastrophic Vietnam War, fundamentally changing America forever. To understand a lie told in 1964, we must first look back, decades earlier, to the dawn of the Cold War. After World War II, the world was cleaved in two: the capitalist West, led by the United States, and the communist East, anchored by the Soviet Union and China. The overriding doctrine of American foreign policy was containment, the belief that communism, like a contagious disease, had to be stopped from spreading, domino by domino. Southeast Asia, specifically Vietnam, was ground zero for this ideological battlefield. For nearly a century, Vietnam had been a colony of France, known as French Indochina. But a formidable nationalist and communist leader named Ho Chi Minh led a fierce independence movement. In 1954, the French were decisively defeated at the Battle of Dien Bien Phu. The ensuing peace agreement temporarily divided Vietnam at the 17th parallel: North Vietnam, led by Ho Chi Minh and backed by the Communists, and South Vietnam, supported by the U.S., which feared a unified communist state. Crucially, the agreement promised nationwide reunification elections in 1956. But the U.S. and its South Vietnamese client state, under the autocratic and increasingly unpopular President Ngo Dinh Diem, blocked the elections. They knew Ho Chi Minh would win a landslide victory. From that moment, the fate of Vietnam was sealed. The conflict became an internal civil war, fueled by external powers, a battle for unification against the iron fist of American Cold War doctrine. By the early 1960s, U.S. involvement was escalating. President John F. Kennedy had sent thousands of military advisors to train and support the Army of the Republic of Vietnam in the South. But beneath the surface of this official assistance, a secret, undeclared war was already being fought. This was Operation 34A, a highly classified program of covert raids against North Vietnam, managed by the CIA and later the MACV. These weren't American ships openly flying the U.S. flag. These were fast patrol boats, often crewed by South Vietnamese commandos, but they were equipped, trained, and directed by U.S. Special Forces advisors. Their mission? Psychological warfare, bombarding North Vietnamese coastal facilities, kidnapping North Vietnamese citizens, and dropping saboteurs. The message was clear: America was already at war, just not openly. In the summer of 1964, these raids were intensifying. The U.S. was essentially poking the bear, testing the limits of North Vietnamese patience. And then Washington made a critical decision that would place American assets directly in harm's way: the introduction of a new, highly visible surveillance operation. Alongside the covert 34A raids, the Navy initiated DeSoto Patrols. These were official, overt electronic intelligence missions, using large U.S. Navy destroyers equipped with advanced radar and listening gear to gather crucial intelligence on North Vietnam's coastal defenses, radio traffic, and military readiness. This was a calculated, deliberate provocation. The destroyers sailed right up to the 12-mile territorial limit claimed by North Vietnam, a limit the U.S. did not officially recognize, adhering instead to the international 3-mile limit. The North Vietnamese knew exactly what these ships were doing. They were American spy ships, and their presence, combined with the 34A raids, created an explosive situation. The Pentagon and the White House knew there was a high risk of retaliation. They were, in effect, daring North Vietnam to strike. And they did. On July 31, 1964, a major 34A raid, directed by U.S. planners, occurred. South Vietnamese commandos attacked a North Vietnamese radar station and a security post on the islands of Hon Mae and Hon U. Just 2 days later, on August 2, 1964, the USS Maddox, sailing on a DeSoto Patrol mere miles from the site of the July 31st raid, was spotted by North Vietnamese torpedo boats. The North Vietnamese saw the Maddox as an accomplice to the recent attacks, or worse, as a direct participant in the hostile actions against their territory. They decided to retaliate. At approximately 4 p.m. local time, 3 North Vietnamese P-4 torpedo boats closed in and fired torpedoes at the Maddox. Unlike the second, more famous incident, the events of August 2nd are factually confirmed. The USS Maddox was indeed attacked. The Maddox, a far superior vessel, returned fire with her 5-inch guns. She was joined by U.S. aircraft scrambled from the nearby aircraft carrier USS Ticonderoga. One North Vietnamese torpedo hit the water but failed to arm. The Maddox sustained only a single bullet hole from machine gun fire, but the engagement was decisive. U.S. forces successfully sank or severely damaged all 3 North Vietnamese torpedo boats. The world was notified that American forces had been attacked and that the North Vietnamese had paid a heavy price. U.S. President Lyndon Johnson immediately issued a stern public warning to Hanoi. But the key decision was not to withdraw the patrol. Instead, Johnson ordered the Maddox to be joined by a second, even larger destroyer, the USS Turner Joy, and sent them both back into the Gulf of Tonkin, a clear message of escalation, defiance, and a deliberate baiting of the North Vietnamese. The stage was set not just for a war, but for the profound and consequential lie that would finally convince the American public and Congress that war was not an option, but an obligation. The second incident, the one that truly changed history, was only 48 hours away. Next step, I can continue the script in Part 2, focusing on the crucial, highly debated events of August 4th, the immediate U.S. reaction, and the swift passage of the Gulf of Tonkin resolution.